Hey, just Mark here. So, if you've ever been to a therapist, like I have multiple times, it's actually a good thing. And sometimes you can learn a few things about yourself and about things that maybe you never thought of before. So, today I want to share at least 5 facts that I have learned by going through therapy and things that my therapist taught me. So, the first one I want to talk about is that your past does not define your future. This was an important one for me to learn because the future that I thought I was going to have was gone. And I had to think about that a lot because now I was being put into a new situation with trying to figure out what my new future looked like. And it was scary. And I had to realize that my past and the things I did and the things I experienced weren't going to define my future going forward. I had to lay out a new path, set some new goals, and so far, I got to say I'm batting probably about 95% in achieving those goals. There's some I definitely have not achieved, and that's totally okay. But I have definitely took that advice and went forward with it. Now, pardon me, another thing that I learned, so the second thing I learned by going through therapy and talking to my therapist is that vulnerability, there's a power in it. There's a power in you being vulnerable as a person. Most people think vulnerability is a weakness. I have learned to allow it to be a strength of mine. I don't mind sharing hard things. I don't mind breaking down a little bit when I need to. And I definitely don't mind, like I'm doing on here, sharing parts of my life that are important and parts of my life that I feel are valuable to myself and valuable to other people who out there. I'm not the only one struggling in this world. There are many people struggling. But being vulnerable allows you to grow and sometimes even face the things that you maybe were afraid to face before. And being vulnerable allows you to help other people and be a part of something bigger than yourself. The third thing that I learned from my therapist was that forgiveness is for you, not for the other person. There are people who I've had in my life that the people say, forgive, forget, move on. And there are people that in my head, I have forgiven for their actions and the things that they did, maybe the ways that they hurt me, or maybe the ways that they changed my life in ways that were negative for a while. But forgiving people helps get you out of the bitterness cycle. And this actually took me a little while to learn because I was bitter over, I was bitter over a lot of things. The life as I knew it was gone. And, and other things like the way people have, I remember one person ratting me out at a job, same thing. But forgiveness begins with you. You don't have to tell that person you forgive them. You just need to decide to forgive them inside your head and inside your heart because it helps you move on. It helps you move forward and opens up any anxiety and stress you may have over that situation. The third thing that I learned from my therapist was that your inner critic is not your friend. Now, how many times do you find yourself beating yourself up for something that maybe you made a mistake on? Or maybe you don't think you're good at something, but you just haven't tried hard enough. We can be our own worst enemies, when it comes to certain things in life. A lot of people don't get ahead because they continuously criticize their own selves. I know people who still say I'm a bad about themselves. I'm a bad person. I'm a bad parent. I'm a bad friend, a brother, sister. And the truth is, you're not as bad as you think. If you're trying different things in your life and you keep saying I'm bad at it, or you keep saying negative things about yourself, you're going to believe it. And that's not fair to you. So your inner critic is not your friend. Find your cheerleader inside of you. Cheer yourself on. I constantly am cheering myself. Oh, sorry about that. I'm constantly cheering myself on because I know what I want out of life. And I know that I got to celebrate the small wins because those are important. The fourth thing I want to talk about that I learned from my therapist is that you are not responsible for other people's happiness. So for someone like me, who is a people pleaser and likes to see people happy, this was a thing that I struggled with for years. If I couldn't make other people happy, I would get a little bit down, depressed, and it would bother me to no ends. And I remember in various situations I've been in where I felt that another person's happiness revolved strictly around me and the things I did for them and the things that I helped them with. And a good example actually is I remember there was a job I had years ago, and I finally started struggling. I was actually really sick with a few things, not realizing it was actually a thyroid problem. But anyway, I was starting to focus on just getting through my day. So normally instead of coming in and be like, oh, happy and cheery and saying hello to everybody, I would come in and I'd still say hi, but I went to my desk, I focused, I got through my day, I ended my day, and I left. And I remember my team lead at the time sat me down in a meeting, not a coaching session, just a regular meeting, and said, you know, Mark, I'm a little bit worried because, you know, you're not your usual self and you're not coming in and being as cheery, and other people aren't quite as cheery because you're not as cheery. You have that influence on people. And she goes, I want my team to be happy, but I've noticed that some people thrive off of that energy you gave and you're not giving it anymore. And I remember looking at her and I said, I'm struggling with some sickness. And I am, at the end of the day, not responsible for the happiness of my team. I said, I'm responsible for my own happiness. And if it spreads to others, great. I'm like, but I shouldn't be the one feeling bad because the team isn't as motivated, you know? And she was surprised that I actually came up with that, but it was the truth. I didn't want to be responsible for other people's happiness. I know I still try to make people happy, laugh, smile, because that's one of the things I just do in life. But at the end of the day, if someone's not happy, it's not your responsibility. It is theirs to find their own truth, their own happiness, their own being in life, right? So it is kind of important in that sense, right? Um, and this kind of ties in with my last point. My fifth thing that I learned in therapy is that you can't change others. You can only change yourself. I have tried numerous times to help change people because I had a perception of who I thought they should be, you know, and I know I've struggled multiple times when people were changing in ways that were, I felt, detrimental to me. But the truth is, we all change, we all grow, we all go through things that shape us as who we are as people. And some of them make us bitter, some of them make us happier, some of them just make us walk through life until we finally feel better. But the reality of it is that you can't change others. If you're, you know, in a friendship, or in most cases, I see this as in relationships, you can't change who that person is. They have to go and do their own thing. And I remember recommending therapy to a few friends and telling them about my experience and how it benefited me, because I thought maybe if they had a neutral party to talk to, it would help them. They didn't heed my advice, which is fine, but you can't change other people. You can only change yourself. So make yourself the best version of yourself that you can be, and let other people find their truth. And if they don't want to seek help, or they don't want to get help for themselves, or make changes in their life, that's not your problem. You can only do so much. I will lift people up and I'll try to give them a hand up, but there's only so much you can do. And it's not your responsibility at the end of the day. And you can't make them change, or can't make them realize specifically that they need certain things. Anyways, I hope these tips helped. I've got many more that I learned in therapy. It was one of the best things I ever could have done for myself when I was at my worst. And even as I got better, I still went. And I don't go as much because I don't need to at the moment. But I've always got my therapist on my phone if I need to go and see him. And he was actually a great neutral party to talk to on a few situations that I went in, health-wise, personal-wise, you know, everything. Anyways, though, I want to thank you all for watching. Please like, please subscribe, comment down below. I love hearing your responses, and I'm doing my best to respond to everybody. And yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.